Well, hello everybody. A very warm welcome to my channel. My name is Louise Savage of Louise Savage Muses. A warm welcome if you're a returning viewer, and an equally warm welcome if you're viewing my channel for the very first time. So my book of the month for, I think it's May. Yes, it is May. I had to think about it then, sorry. Is What Strange Paradise by Omar Akkad. Now, I can't remember where I picked this book up. I know it was sometime last year when I was book shopping. It's a book that, you know, I hadn't come across it. I hadn't heard of it. I was just having a good old rummage in a bookshop, picked it up, looked at it, read the first few pages and thought, I really want to read this book. And I have not been disappointed. I don't know why this book hasn't been more on the radar over here in the UK. I know it won the Giller Prize in Canada a few years ago. I think it was published maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So clearly, you know, it's had acclaim there. The author, Omar El Akkad, sorry, I have to check, was born in Egypt. He then grew up in Doha and then moved to Canada and completed his education there. And now I think is actually a US citizen. Now, the reason I tell you this, he's also a journalist, and he has covered Guantanamo Bay, he's covered Black Lives Matter, all sorts of big, I think he's in his early 40s, all sorts of very big political moments, I suppose, global political moments in the last decade or two. He seems to have sort of been present and had the ability or the opportunity to interview people involved. So he sat down to write this novel, I guess, with a pretty good knowledge of some of these very important and controversial political issues. And this novel is about a little Syrian boy. He's only 9 years old, and for reasons which I won't go into because I don't want to spoil the plot, he ends up on a boat, crossing a refugee boat where people have paid vast amounts of money to cross over from Egypt to Europe. Of course, it's all illegal, and every single one of the people on that boat has been completely misled and bought into something that is not remotely safe. They've been sold this image of a kind of cruise ship, food, but they are cramped on this boat and travelling in the most absolutely appalling conditions. And so, you know, it's a book that looks at the trauma of that. And I've read a couple of books that have covered this issue, which I've found really compelling. But there's something about the way that he, although it's a novel about something appalling, he manages to fill it with such humanity, and he has such warmth for his Amir, the little boy who he's sending on that journey. And then the character that he meets at the island at the other end, I think she's called Verna. Her name is Vanna with a sort of umlaut thing. I guess she's probably of Swedish background or something like that. But she's 15. So the book focuses on the relationship between this little boy and having gone through that traumatic journey. And then he is kind of rescued, helped, assisted by this young 15-year-old girl on the island, because the island is being patrolled, and anybody who survives the journey is rounded up and passed on to the authorities to be processed. And that processing isn't always very kind, it isn't always very thoughtful. And the book exposes completely the hypocrisy and the inadequacy of the West in terms of how it deals with people who have made similar journeys. And it's done so beautifully, and without overtly criticizing. It's a book that really, really, really makes you think, and makes you think about how implicit your own voice or silence or whatever it might be um, becomes in a global situation like this. So I'll give you an example first of all of his writing. I think his writing is really powerful. I kind of wish that I'd read this when I was teaching in secondary schools, because I think this is a book that, because it's almost like an adventure story, because it's mainly told from the point of view of this little boy, you do get a sense of adventure. He ends up on that boat unwittingly, and so therefore, you know, that again, it's really helpful because you're looking at it from a child's perspective, a child who didn't know anything about all of this. And so the sort of nonsense of it becomes even more clear. One of the things that happens is that you get a real sense of just how frightening the journey is. And there are sections, the book's really interestingly structured, so the sections are all labelled before and after, and it's before is the build up to the boat journey, and the boat journey after is the story once he arrives on this island with the teenager. And so, you know, for a significant proportion of the book, you are crossing that water with of all the chaos of the passing storm and the passengers' screams and prayers, it was the sound of people beneath the boards that frightened him most, because there are two levels of passenger on this boat. There are the people who have managed to pay a bit more, who are above water level, and then there are people who've been literally hammered, nails have been hammered down, they're actually enclosed below. It reminds me a bit of descriptions of slave ships that I've read. It made the boat living, made it organic and coldly voracious, a stomach in mid-digestion. Even now he could hear it beneath him, that half-alive sound. No one else around him seemed to notice. Sitting behind him, Ibrahim sipped on a small vial of lemon juice to keep her nausea at bay, and continued quietly reciting her foreign mantra. Hello, I am pregnant. I will have baby on April 28. I need hospital and doctor to have safe baby. Please help. So even from that very short, you know, passage, you can see how the little boy's perception is so different from the adult that he happens to be sat next to, who is a pregnant woman who's traveling. And so you get these different perspectives, but mainly the one of the child. So I think that's something that is really wonderful about this book. And another thing that I loved about it was that this island is an island with a massive hotel complex, with amazing swimming pools, with luxurious bedrooms and family suites, and you know, it's kind of the lap of luxury, and yet it's existing side by side with these migrant boats coming in regularly. I mean, it's, you know, you've also got the politics of the locals who live on the island, who, you know, are, the majority seem to be very, very opposed to the migrant population. And it, you know, he exposes all of that brilliantly as well. But here, there's a description of which looks at the sea from the tourist perspective. Now remember that in this novel, all these people have been coming across and risking their lives and drowning as a result. Always the tourists rave about the clarity of the water. Here on the island, where the economy runs on foreigners' money, there exists an obsession with the transparency of it, the way one can stand on a nearby cliffside and, looking down, view plainly everything that lives beneath the surface. The tourists seem to prize this above all else. It doesn't much matter what lines the seabed, so long as they can see it from a distance, decipher it with their eyes rather than the soles of their feet. And again, I read that, as I've read many, many moments in this book, and it's taken my breath away, because it's simple, but that whole sort of metaphor, if you like, or analogy, that very clearly, you know, it shows the gulf between the tourists and the migrants or the refugees, but it also shows, you know, you can translate that to the global picture, and how, you know, I might choose to see the beauty in in a situation or a part of the world, but not really look further than the end of my nose. Um, and he that's what he does in this book. He sort of just very, very gently, in this wonderful story, and you know, the of course, Werner and Amir can't communicate through words because they don't share a language. Um, so the whole sort of interaction between these two children just makes an absolute nonsense of what we do to each other as human beings, in the name of religion, ethnicity, whatever it might be. Because again, you're seeing the whole thing through this the simplicity and the truth of a child's perspective. So this book has moved me intensely, actually, and I know that he wrote a previous book. I think it's called American War. I now want to go away and read that, and I think he's earlier this year, maybe last year, I think he's published another book called One Day, which is about the situation in Gaza currently. So I'm very interested to pick up a copy of that. Yeah, this guy for me is very much going to be one to watch, and I commend this book to you very, very highly. And don't be frightened off by the the sort of distressful, is that a word? I'm not sure. The distressful situation is what I wanted to say, because there is enough humanity and resilience, and the book is peopled with warm people as well as people who are prepared to exploit and demean each other. So there you are. That's my book of the month for May. Please let me know what you've been reading. Please let me know what your favourite books of the month are. I have lost all capacity for grammar and vocabulary right now, so there we go. It's probably time for me to press stop on my machine. Take care, everyone, and speak to you again very, very soon. Bye.